The best moment on a climb is when you realize I could do this. And then you have to prove that you can do it. And that's where the anxiety comes in, I think, because that process is a lot longer than a lot of people think.
Hey y'all, welcome back to the Struggle Climbing Show. It's me, Ryan Devlin. I'm your Weekend Warrior host for this Weekend Warrior episode, and I'm so psyched you're here because it's a little Freaky Friday going on over here because we have another podcaster as our Weekend Warrior guest, and Hannah hosts the American Alpine Club podcast where they do a series called Undercover Crushers. So we've got Weekend Warriors meeting Undercover Crushers on this one, and Undercover Crusher Hannah Provost is indeed V11 and 5.13 climber who started climbing in college in Indiana, the climbing mecca of Indiana, but then she came down to the Red quite a bit and now lives out in Colorado as she works for the American Alpine Club. And she has just ascended through the skills, the fitness, and the grades as a boulderer, which comes kind of quote-unquote easier to her, as she explains in this interview, as well as a sport climber, which is more of a struggle for her, but also where her biggest psych is, it seems like. So this conversation is just packed full of really insightful and really actionable lessons that Hannah has picked up over the years here as she has grown as a very impressive and talented rock climber who only gets out like on the weekends. I mean, she works for the American Alpine Club, so they can get out a little bit more than that when conditions are good, but it's a real job. She's got a real job. Actually, she's got like a few jobs. I mentioned the podcast there, but she's also the content director for the AAC. She's editor-in-chief of the quarterly magazines they put out over there. And she's also helping to edit their new publication, the American Climbing Journal, or the ACJ. You've probably seen loads of information on that out there. It's got that incredible photo of Michaela Kirsch, that like gorgeous sunset photo. And she's been working on that very closely with Matt Samet, friend of the show and prior guest Matt Samet. And so we talk a bit about that on the back end here. But first, we really unpack Hannah's climbing journey. And the two things that resonated with me the most that I want to make sure you pay particular attention to is how she feels and experiences the doubt and anxiety that come in once we recognize we can do a thing. Like once we know we can climb something hard, there's like that burst of joy and elation, that dopamine rush, maybe even more so than the ascent itself, as we discuss in this. But then there can be this real doubt and anxiety that comes in after that. And I think it's very relatable that she talks about this, and I appreciated her being so open, but also B, she has some really cool tactics that she uses in order to help her manage those feelings and those emotions. The other thing that I thought was just kind of like revelatory, and that is this 5.12 Pact that she made with her friends. And I won't go into it now because she goes into it in this interview, but the idea around how she looked at this 5.12 Pact, and then after that did kind of a 5.13 version of that, and how it basically led to this quantum leap in her progression as a climber through what were the hardest grades for her on sport climbs, but this could apply to bouldering or anything else as well. And I just loved that so much. I really think that there's something there, you guys. Like just listen up for that section because I really think there's something to this. But there's something to everything else in here. I mean, she unlocked a way to use her hips as a quote-unquote fifth limb recently in working with friend of the show, Nate Drolet, and that's really unlocked some major things for her. So there's just a ton in this interview here. And then on the backside, I'll tell you about my climbing and some things that I've been working on lately. But let's just go ahead and dig right in here because I hope I have gotten you sufficiently stoked to hear every single aspect of this conversation with an absolute weekend warrior crusher, Hannah Provost. How are you today?
Pretty good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to be in the recording booth with a fellow podcaster, a fellow climber. This is great. This is going to be a good weekend warrior because you know what you're doing.
Yeah, but I've never been on this side of the whole deal before. I'm normally hiding behind the questions, so this is going to be a little weird for me, I think.
It's true. Yeah, I'm just going to give you a warning right now. Don't try to turn the microphone on me, Hannah. This is what happens like when if I have Chris Kalous on or Hannah Morris or whatever, they'll start asking me questions. I'm like, no, that's not how it works.
Fair.
Although we can have a conversation. But yeah, I'm really excited. I've really been enjoying the podcast that you've been putting out. And you are a weekend warrior, and you do a series called Undercover Crushers, which is in the similar vibe. So these should be comfortable waters for you, I would think.
Yeah, hopefully.
Good. Of course, this conversation came about because our mutual friend, Matt Samet, basically outed you to me. He's like, you should talk to Hannah. She's an absolute crusher and she probably won't want to talk about it, but here you are. You're willing to talk about it. I love it.
Yeah, he really had to talk me into it, but it's working out.
That's great. He's such a good guy and obviously a heck of a climber himself. And we'll talk about the work that he's doing with you and the AAC here in just a little bit here. But let's get to know you first as a person and as a climber. Let's go through the basic demo stuff first, if we could. So age, location, when did you start climbing? Let's start there.
Yeah, I'm 30. I started climbing in 2014, so I think that's 11 going on 12 years. Mm-hmm. And I'm based in Golden, Colorado right now.
Is that where you were at when you started climbing as well?
I started climbing when I was living in Indiana, so we would drive to the Red every weekend that we could from college.
Yes.
Yeah.
So this was in college when you started, so you had a college crew?
Yes. Yeah, there was a very tight-knit climbing club at the university I was at. There's 30 of us, and 6-hour drives to the Red will bond you,
That's really cool. So I'd love to learn just a little bit about that because I didn't start climbing until after college. Did you all have regular gym sessions and then you would just plan these kind of epic road trips or quick strikes to the Red whenever you could do it?
Yeah, so there was much lore because Bill Ramsey used to work at the university that I went to, and
Notre Dame.
Yep, Notre Dame. And then I think he was the reason that they converted a racquetball court into a bouldering gym, and it was classically vert on two sides and then a 45-degree angle. And so yeah, it was very much a dirtbag gym, and we would all set it ourselves, and none of us really knew what we were doing. And by the time I was there, Bill Ramsey was gone, so I never got to meet him, but he was this legend that everyone would talk about. And then we would do kind of 3 club sanctioned trips a year where kind of the more experienced climbers would lead all the new climbers and bring them to the Red and show them how to lead climb outside, show them how to, we would clean on rappel because we didn't know, that kind of thing. Right. It was very interesting, the tactics we started with and now what I'm more used to.
It's so funny because I was out there not too long ago out at the Red, and I was at Bob Marley Crag, and it was spring break, college spring break, and there was a couple clubs there. One was from Ohio, and 2 of them were using ATCs, and I was like, guys, here, I've got an extra gree. It was just, but everybody kind of starts in the same place, which is just, relatively clueless and clueless of how reckless they are, and just having so much fun, and you just kind of learn as you go. Mm-hmm. It's surprising that there isn't a thicker volume of, accidents in North American climbing just on college climbing clubs.
Yeah, for real.
But that's what got you psyched on climbing and obviously outdoor climbing as well. So your first outdoor climbing experiences were at the Red. Tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, it's been really interesting to see, because when I was going in 2014, we would a lot of the buildings that exist in McGill's weren't there. Right. And so I've just seen it change so much over the years, which has been really cool, and just seen it just blow up, which has been very fun. It was just this magical place that we would always escape to, and we would go even when it was freezing in November and there was icicles, and we would go when it was really hot in September, and we were just sliding off every jug, and It didn't matter. We didn't know what temps were. We were just psyched.
Love it. Oh man. Well, I'm excited to explore a little bit more of that. But then obviously, you got really bit by the bug. You're out in Colorado now. What is your job officially?
I work at the American Alpine Club. I'm the content director. So that means that I am the editor-in-chief of our quarterly magazine, which goes to 15,000 of our members, which is really cool. And so I get to write and edit climbing stories all the time, which is really sick. And then I host the AAC podcast, as we were alluding to earlier. And so it's pretty weird to be on the receiving end of the interview. And also I help edit the new book that we're releasing this year, the American Climbing Journal.
Oh, so psyched. You're just like surrounded by climbing. It's so cool, Hannah. Yeah. Is that a kind of traditional 9 to 5 schedule that you have now?
Yeah, I mean, I would say that it is like a little more flexible. Like it's a hybrid schedule. So we have something called Flex Fridays. So if you don't like have like a bunch of deadlines, you can go climbing.
Nice.
I go to 10 Sleep every June and work hybrid from there. And like, it's just super understood that if you're on a climbing trip, like as long as you get your work done, like climbing is supported.
Right. Yeah, it's as one would expect and hope from working with an organization that you do that. That's pretty cool. So you're a weekend warrior, but you're a flexi weekend warrior. If there's really good conditions and you're close on a proj on Friday, then you can pop out there.
Totally. Yeah.
Yeah, right on. Well, let's talk a bit about your climbing then now that's kind of more current. So obviously you started in gyms in South Bend, did those trips to the Red River Gorge. How would you pigeonhole yourself, if you could, as a climber? What's your style?
I always say that I'm naturally a boulderer, but I really want to be a sport climber. Like I'm a very punchy, powerful climber, and endurance is hard for me to acquire, I would say. I've been fighting for like the last 6 years to get endurance, and it's still a process. And so I'm always like, I tend to alternate between bouldering. I do a bouldering season in the winter, and then I mostly focus on sport climbing. And I just really like punchy, like crimps, underclings, like powerful boulders on climbs. I think I like shorter pitches because one of my projects last year was 120 feet in the Flatirons, and I was like, what is this? Like, this is crazy.
Good for you. Good for you pushing yourself out of that comfort zone. Yeah, I'm curious about the motivation there because oftentimes we tend to enjoy what we're good at or enjoy kind of what comes easy, or that's just like, ride the horse in the direction it's going type philosophy. But that's not the case with you. Why do you aspire to be the sport climber that you're working on right now when the bouldering is kind of the low-hanging fruit?
I love the mental process on sport climbs. I love the breath work you have to do, and like the links are just much more involved. Like the process is longer. I'm like really fearful climber, and I have been for a long time. And so I have gotten way better about that, but like the process of learning to be brave above a bolt that normally scares me, like it's just more fulfilling for me, I guess. I still, I get that shot of adrenaline on some boulders as well, but because it's a longer process on sport climbs, I think I love like having to calm my heart rate at a rest. That's like a really fun feeling.
Not many of those on boulders, although I guess maybe with some high balls, you get to like a jug in the middle and have to really collect yourself, although I've never experienced that. I've seen people do that. But yeah, sport climbing, I really relate to what you just said there. But then I pushed myself out of my comfort zone because I'm naturally more of an endurance kind of slow, slothy climbing athlete. I pushed myself out of my comfort zone to go on like a bouldering journey. And it really kind of expanded not only my climbing toolkit, but also the mental side. And I experienced new levels of joy just kind of in the discomfort. So I think it's nice for those who are listening. It is nice to maybe have a thing that you lean towards, but then every once in a while push yourself out to try new things. And if we could, let's just go ahead and dumb this down to the most base level and just talk about grades for a second, so at least the audience understands where you're currently at. And can you hit us with like kind of bouldering grades, sport grades, or recent ascents or things that you're working on?
So a couple months ago, I did my first V11, which was sick.
Hell yeah.
Yeah.
Congrats.
Thanks. And then I've climbed 13B sport climbing.
Amazing. God, you're really strong, Hannah. Way to go. Congratulations. And you didn't start that way. So you got to where you are today over the course of, the last handful of years since you started climbing just in college. And so I'm really excited to unpack that as a fellow weekend warrior and see what's been working for you. But first, let's enter in through the lens of struggle. And I'd love to understand what your relationship is with struggle as a rock climber.
Oh, it's like all the time, trying to embrace it. My main thing is that I have like a ton of fear of failure and doubt cycles that happen a lot. And with that boulder a couple months ago, the V11, I had just like the most doubt cycles ever, which is it was really interesting because I went into projecting it having not really trained. I had gone to the Red in the fall, and so I was a noodle because like you get really good endurance at the Red, but you can't not snappy like bouldering.
Right.
Strength. So and then I just decided to become a boulderer for the season without really preparing. And then I wanted to try my hardest boulder ever. So it was like I didn't really set myself up. And yet I had these expectations. And it's really interesting because I have like two competing, warring experiences all the time that I believe in my capabilities. And yet when I'm in the process, the doubt bubbles up like all the time. And I think most climbers experience this. And when climbers don't seem to experience this, it drives me nuts. I'm like, how do you do that?
Right.
But so I would say that was like the biggest like recent struggle. And one of the things that I'm really enjoying exploring is like how to like regulate those emotions and countering that like level of intensity anxiety about like, am I capable of this with just questions? Because questions help like ground me in the experience. So I started doing this thing where I would like before a session, I would be like, okay, what questions am I going to ask today? Because I've heard people like do like the intentions thing, which is really cool. It's like a goal setting. But I found that if I didn't meet my intentions, then I was also mad, right? So then I'd be like, what will it feel like to get to that move from the ground? And how does that change your beta? And like that kind of thing. So then the actual act of asking the question is the only thing I need to be worrying about instead of can I accomplish anything? Right. And that helps like really reorient me towards like, because people keep saying, enjoy the process is not about the end result. And I would just like be like, but how? Like I can't, like I can't just let go of it. And so the actual practice of asking the questions helps me ground me in like the movement, the tactics, like the links, and in a way that's like not about accomplishing something. But if you want to, you can still like write a list of questions and tick them off as you go through your session. So It's like, yeah.
Is the idea then for you prior to your session, you're thinking about these questions and either writing them down or just kind of internalizing them, not when something happens, not like, oh, I climbed and fell on the fourth move. Let me investigate this. You're almost like pre-investigating?
Yes, because I think what I would do is I'd go into especially the end game part of it when you like kind of know like today I could send.
Yeah.
Yeah. I get really like a lot of like feeling in my chest of anxiety of like, could I send? And then it sabotages myself. And so what I like to do is like, as I'm starting to feel that, like going into the session, like that morning or the night before, be like, okay, instead of being like, I'm going to get a high point today, or I'm going to try to send today, like those intentions, or like goals, I ask like, okay, I just did a 13B last week that going into the session that I sent, I was like, what is it going to feel like to do the new crux beta from the ground? And is it going to put pressure on like the very last move I could like do like 70% of the time, the last move of the crux. And so doing it from the ground, is it going to change what I have to know and like think about what I'm doing? And focusing on that and like the movement part helped me get a high point and then help me send it, right? Because I wasn't like, oh, I could send today, focusing on that. I was just like asking questions to help me focus on the movement part. And then kind of the tactics followed.
I really like that mental shift there. It evokes a conversation that I had with Francis Senzaro where he talks a lot about rather than trying to send or think about the send, trying to master every movement. And wherever you come off, or maybe you don't come off, whatever, but you know, can there be mastery or the attempt at mastery of every movement? And then, yeah, that really does bring you more into that specific moment. You're not thinking 10 moves ahead. You're just kind of there. And so yeah, something about asking that question, that very specific question, like you asked yourself there, like, how will this feel when I make it to this point, keeps you focused on that thing rather than, oh, today could be the day, which it sounds like for you is something that you struggle with, something that you wrestle with is maybe more so as you get close to being able to do the thing, as opposed to like setting, oh, I want to climb V11. Maybe there was doubt then as well, but does it build? Does it become more of a roadblock, if you will, as it could go?
Yeah, I strongly feel that there's the best moment. Sending is not actually that great, but the best moment on a climb is when you realize I could do this. Like you're far enough into the process, you're like, I could do this. And then you have to prove that you can do it. And that's where the anxiety comes in, I think, because that process is a lot longer than a lot of people think, I think. Because the moment of like, oh, I could do this, like then I think a lot of people want it to be like next session. And you just kind of have to put in the work. And that's a little scary because you have to sit with like this is hard work, because climbing is hard work. And I have to show up.
Well, I'm so glad that you just verbalized that. I've talked about that a little bit on the show, and certainly with my friends, because I agree. I think one of the coolest feelings in climbing is that moment that you know it can happen, or maybe it's going to happen. Like that happened to me when I was working on my first 13A. It was the Force, my only 13A. I had a session where I was like, oh, I'm gonna do this, and it was such a cool feeling. It was like this incredible like wash of joy that came over. But then, to your point, I didn't do it. I didn't do it for months. Like it carried over another season. Like I could have, and I didn't at the end of that season. And then it like carried over, and then, yeah, the anxiety started to build. And I like your idea about the questions there. I think that's very cool. What else do you do to manage those feelings or the self-doubt?
I think it all kind of circles around like being in the present moment. So focusing on movement, focusing on tactics, focusing what I can learn, like those questions are like bringing me there. And then also like breathing and singing in my head. I told Hazel Finley this, and she's like, I think this is a coping mechanism, and you should maybe like let go of your like need to send. And I was like, I'll get there eventually. Because I think the singing in my head is like a distraction thing. And it just gets me like out of the anxiety thoughts of like, am I going to mess this move up or whatever?
You don't have like, you're not music like earbuds. You're just like, these are songs that you're just running.
Just songs running in my head. I don't actually like the having earbuds for some reason. Yeah.
And then the breath work you noted was something that excites you about sport climbing. Mm-hmm. Yeah, kind of like trying to find that calm at a rest, or maybe you have to psych yourself up for a crux. Mm-hmm. Is that something that you've worked with a coach on, or how have you developed breath work technique en route?
So I would say this is like mostly self-taught, just talking to people. I would say that one of the things that I just wish there was more content in climbing about is this thing, because I think that it's kind of like this secret like sport tactic that a lot of people, like other sports, use that I don't know if climbing has fully explored yet. I've seen like one or two podcasts out there. Chris Hampton ended up talking a lot about this at one point in some of the stuff he was doing about like ramping yourself up versus calming yourself down, and like how you can leverage that for different types of like movement. But then at the same time, there's also who you are as a person, and you might lean more towards one or the other. So I am more angsty. So most of the time I have to calm myself down. And actually like on that V11, I was kind of experimenting with the idea of like really sharp breaths before pulling on, like hyping myself up, almost like hyperventilating for like a second. And then you're ready to fight, kind of. You're in more fight or flight mode.
Right. And
I found that I messed up beta like a lot if I got myself into that position, even though like the general theory is that for more intensive movement, you would need to do that. So like on a boulder. But I think part of it was the boulder that I was working on was a longer boulder with 17 moves. So I actually needed to be calm for more of it. But I also like think that in general, I have pretty high anxiety about performing well or whatever. And so actually calming myself and rooting myself in more like calm breath helps me focus.
I appreciate you saying that. I had a conversation not too long ago with a woman. She's a sports psychologist she was with the Olympic team. Kyra Condi introduced me to her, and now she works with a professional baseball team, I think maybe in Colorado, actually, the Avalanche. And anyway, she and I talked actually at length about really kind of understanding like, what's my set point? Do I run high, or do I run like a little bit low? Do I need to amp myself up or calm myself down, and some tactics around that? I'll send you, it was a pro clinic episode, so it's just for Patreon members, but I'll send it to you. Since now you're a guest on the show, you can get a free copy of it. For the listener, if you're interested in a little bit of that, then you can check out that interview I did with Lindsay Shaw. So we focused on the mental side, which is really the most exciting side of climbing, I think, for a lot of people. But of course, there's a huge physical side, especially when it comes to climbing 8A like you do. V11 is just like a very nearly elite level of climbing. And you said that like you didn't do a whole lot of preparation for this recent V11 that you did, but obviously you do quite a bit of training. And so I'd like to unpack that a little bit. As a weekend warrior, what's your training philosophy? Walk us through a little bit of, a week in the life of Hannah training.
So I like to have some seasonality because I do live in Colorado, which means that I could climb hard year round if I wanted to. So I build in seasonality because I've tried to do that and I totally burnt out. So what I'll do is I will train in the like kind of winter to spring, so that like May, June time period, I have like a performance peak, and then I kind of mess around and do whatever I want to do in the summer and just have fun and go to Rifle and climb 11D there because everything at Rifle's hard. and then I'll normally either pick if I'm prepping for like a trip in the fall or like a winter bouldering season. So last year I went to the Red for 3 weeks. So I did more of like a sport climbing, like 2 months of training, like a mini training season, and then went to the Red. But the year before that, I did 2 months of prepping for bouldering. Yeah, so like 2 training seasons a year, very like do a training season where I'm mostly focused on training. I might climb outside, but not trying to perform. 2 months of like performance period after that. 2 months of chill, 2 months of training, 2 months of performance, alternating like that.
Got it. So we're as we're recording this, we're kind of coming out of the spring, heading into the summer. So summer's going to be a little bit more of the fun, get to Rifle and chill. And then as you focus on the fall, have you identified fall goals?
No, I'm not sure yet. I'm actually like I just finished my spring training and am about to go to 10 sleep for a month. So that's kind of like where I want to perform this time around. And then when I come back from that, I'll figure out what's next.
Cool. So when you are in a training block, it's mostly indoors, as you're saying, you get outside every once in a while, but what tools are you using and what are you focusing on?
This last year, I worked with Nate Drolet, who I know you just had on the podcast.
Oh, Nate's the best.
Yeah.
I was actually just out in Salt Lake City for CWA and got a day at the gym with him. We did some filming for some YouTube videos that are going to be coming out. And then we went out to Little Cottonwood and climbed. Such a good guy and a very thoughtful coach. Yeah.
He helped me realize that I like basically don't use my hips. I'm very strong in my shoulders. And so I generate a lot of my momentum from like big, like powerful shouldery moves. And he was like, you could be more efficient if you like use your hips as a tool. So that has like transformed my experience, which is really interesting. So people should check him out. He's got a lot to say.
I know Nate works with people in person in Salt Lake, but was this mostly with videos?
This was through Power Company's app online.
So you would send him something of you on a moon board or something like that, and he would analyze it?
Yeah, we did kind of like an initial movement analysis where I sent him a bunch of outdoor videos, and he kind of summed up this summary of like, this is why I'm structuring your training plan this way and how I want you to focus like for movement stuff. And it was partially like I had told him that I wanted to focus on power endurance because that's a weakness of mine. And that's really the type of sport climbing I love doing is multiple stacked boulders. And so, yeah, he kind of gave me a video summary. And then throughout the whole process, I would send him stuff and he'd be like, well, try this and that kind of thing.
All right, y'all, just want to take a quick second here to tell you about the shoes that I've been wearing to send some progies recently. And obviously, shoes are the most critical piece of equipment that we could have as rock climbers because that is what is making contact with the rock. And I've got 2 favorite shoes that Scarpa's making right now, one for my indoor progies and one for my outdoor ones. So first on the indoor progies, spending a lot of time on steep kilterboard climbs and also working on those really fun, dynamic, like comp style sets over at the gym. And the shoes that I've been using for that are the Furia Air. They're brand new, redesign, incredible color. I love the look with the red, black, and white in there. And I am telling you, they allow me to stick to the tiniest of holds or the smeariest of volumes. And that's because the Vibram Grip 2 rubber is incredibly sticky and the shoe itself is super, super soft and super lightweight. If you're an intermediate to advanced climber and you're looking for a shoe that will be incredibly responsive, man, am I loving those Furia Airs. You put them on and then you just don't even feel them. They're feather light and they fit like a glove. And then for the outdoor progies, well, if you saw my video of me sending Bulldog, my first V8 outside, I used my tried and true Instinct VSRs, which is a more supple version of their award-winning Instinct VS. I had a few really technical heel hooks on Bulldog, and these Instincts worked like a dream. They're also amazing on the really overhung pocket climbing out here at the Red River Gorge. I used that same shoe to send my 13A project, The Force, about a year ago. So that's it. The Furia Air and the Instinct VSRs, those are my go-to weapons right now. Check them out over on the Scarpa site. I'll put a link right down there in the show notes. And by the way, if you pick pick up a pair of shoes over at Scarpa and you live in North America, use code STRUGGLE at checkout and you'll get a top secret gift for free with your order. All that information's right there in your show notes. Scarpa, no place too far. You've noted that kind of the strength and the power are coming more naturally for you. You're wanting to build out more of that endurance toolkit, which is something that I'm diving into now, coming off of my bouldering phase and wanting to be in shape for some of those long, pumpy, I think I'm going to project something in the Madness Cave this fall. So basically like the absolute other end of the spectrum from bouldering is what I'm trying to take on right now. And I'm curious what you're doing to build endurance or capacity for a sport climbing season.
So actually this training season was very simple. It was basically a board session that had very specific like asks from me. Like one of the projects had to be like wide climbing because I'm very short. I'm 5 foot and a -2 ape index. And I think I avoid wide climbing, but obviously that would be to my advantage if I can climb at larger reach, like whatever my full span is. And then, so that would be one, like really like limit bouldering basically for one session. The other session would be 4x4s. And then I would hangboard and like do some supplemental weightlifting. And it was like very simple. And I had never done 4x4s for more than 4 weeks in a row before. But he had some like really thoughtful ways of that we would adjust it over time so that you don't like completely tank, because you've probably done 4x4s. They're like so strenuous and like really fatigue you. But yeah, it's been really working.
That's really cool because 4x4s, I guess, unless depending on how you structure them, those are very power endurance-y. And obviously doing a hard bouldering day is going to be strength and power. Is there any like general endurance, like just build up the capacity type stuff? Or maybe that's not a focus because you're not focusing on 120-foot routes for this season.
He would have me do like 20 boulders in 20 minutes kind of stuff for aerobic power, like under V3 or something.
Got it.
Yeah.
Okay. And I'm curious about the technique side as well, because I spent a day with him, as I noted. We did a video about heel hooking, and it was crazy to me. We spent like an hour, and I left there with such a better understanding and like muscle kind of motor movement and positioning just from like an hour with Nate working on heel hooks than I have in years, like just, you know, trying to do it myself at the gym or watching videos or working with friends. And so he really does have a knack for identifying energy leaks or just positional opportunities and technique opportunities. So is there a way for you to, I know this is not a visual medium as a podcast, but to try to visualize for me and the audience what you weren't doing with your hips and now like what you are?
Yeah. This isn't a Nate Drolet phrase, but I heard it elsewhere. Using your hips as a fifth limb, basically it just asks you to generate more with your feet. And it's like a lot of it's like I would be in like a really tight position and kind of snap out like a viper to the next hold, right? Mm-hmm. It was very quick, used a lot of speed and contact strength because I would snatch the hold like with a lot of speed going on. And I would also often therefore fall out of tension as I got holds. And he was suggesting like from that starting position, make like kind of the classic like J with your hips or whatever, but not all the time is it that exact shape. But what happens when you generate more momentum from your hips? And it's literally, I swear to God, it is just thinking about it that matters. Because like that's all it took for me to start understanding that I was like mostly, I think from fear, thinking about where my hands were, thinking about like, I feel strong in this position, and then I'll get to the next hand, and therefore I'll feel strong in that position. But you waste so much energy doing that. And if you generate more with your feet and like use hip movement to get there, you're gonna like more softly land in the position and you won't probably snap out of it, like fall out of tension. Yeah, I don't know if that helps visualize.
No, yeah, it does. Where are you doing this? Was this on sport climbs or was this on boulders? Like as you're practicing this and kind of trying to like think about hips and all that. I mean, obviously when we're trying to send something really hard, hopefully our mind isn't really thinking about anything, but in training, we can do this. We can kind of deliberately say, okay, I'm going to make my hips move, or I'm going to try to softly dead point things. And where were you running those drills, if you will?
Mostly in my indoor training sessions, like on my warm-up boulders at first. And then we had like multiple tiers of warm-ups. So then I would do my, like eventually as it started to feel more natural, I would introduce it to like higher and higher grades. And I still like have difficulty. It's definitely not fully ingrained yet because I have difficulty when I am like fully cruxing. I'm not thinking about my hips most of the time. So yeah.
It's so funny. I did a treadwall session yesterday, and it was just like kind of very easy, as Eric Hurst calls it, zone 2, just kind of paddling, like not to get pumped, just let's keep it aerobic. And it could just be so mindless, but I was really trying to think of how I felt as I was making these very, very submaximal moves. And what I realized is like, yeah, I'm not using my legs nearly as much as I feel like I could. You know, like I'll grab a hold and I'll like start the move by pulling rather than by standing. And just as I was like on the tread wall, I was like, okay, let's just do a 2-minute section here where I don't pull at all. And it's like almost got me like super back to like the original basics of straight arm climbing. But as I was doing that, I was noticing how much less force was on my fingers as I was starting every move with my legs or my butt or wherever, it kind of depended on where my feet were at. And then I would pull in a little bit at the end to be able to go for the next hold rather than pull and stand at the same time. And I was like, holy smokes, I think I'm not using my feet. It was like such a weird realization. Like, oh my God, am I a bad climber? I think I might be a bad climber.
Yeah.
I don't know. I guess what I need to do is probably book another session with Nate.
Yeah. I mean, I've been climbing for 11 years. And I think for a couple of years recently, a lot of people have said, oh, you have really good technique. And I kind of like let that like soak in. I was like, oh, I have good technique. And then this year I've been like really paying attention to the anatomy of a move. Like, I think I used to be able to like conceptualize pieces of a route, be like, that's the intro section, that's the crux section, like these are sequences, whatever. But like moves have sequences to them too. They have a start and a middle and an end. And like, I don't think I had ever thought about that until like the last year. And which made me start thinking about like, I'm not using my hips. I'm not actually drilling into my feet. I'm over gripping in this position. Like all of these things that kind of compose a move. Mm-hmm. And I was like, there's so much more to learn. And I've been already climbing for 11 years and I actually know nothing. And it's a very kind of cool experience to be like, oh, there's so much more to learn. Like I get to restart. I get to interrogate like what a heel hook is, you know, and how to do it well. And it's very fun. I love this.
I freaking love this. I really do think that there's something to that. What is it the Dunning-Kruger? What is it? Like the more you know about something, the more you're aware that you don't know anything?
Yeah.
Yeah. It's so true. But it's so good because then, yeah, we get to have like that beginner mindset again and get like all those noob gains just in a different way. Mm-hmm. Ooh, I love this, Hannah. Okay, so a question that I often ask is like, what was like one thing that you felt made a huge difference in your climbing progression? What comes to mind?
There was this year that I moved to Colorado and I started climbing on rock like a lot more. Like I moved from Pennsylvania and had like a lot more access to rock all of a sudden when I was in Colorado. And, you know, people say that all the time, like the more you can get outside, the more experienced you're going to be. But I found that within my first year, I was like, oh, and I think I had like climbed to like 12C at the time. I was like, I'm really intimidated by 5.12. Like I have that warring feeling of like, I can do this, but what if I can't, you know? And so I made a pact with some friends and it was called the 5.12 Pact. And the whole idea was that we would get to the top of 40 5.12s, not try to send, just get on 40 5.12s. You could clip up if you needed to, that sort of thing. You could use fun tactics. And I found in the experience that 5.12 became like way less intimidating. And I think especially for people who have this like fear of failure where sending is something that really blocks them because they're like, I need to send this and I should be able to send this. And you have that like should language, kind of taking sending out of the equation and just building goals around getting just a lot of experience on a grade will be like, it'll add a lot of confidence. And like in the process, I sent a ton of those 5.12s. And then the year after that, I set a very audacious goal of getting to the top of 13 5.13s because similarly, I had done 113A and I was like, 13 is so scary. Like, I don't want to get on these because what if I can't do it? And so I took sending out of the equation and I was like, I'm just going to get experience on the grade and then promptly send 3 more. So I've never heard of anyone doing that, of like really decentering sending in that way. But it like literally, I think that a huge part of like my sense of imposter syndrome on those grades went away through that process, as well as just like my fear of falling. I had to practice falling a lot in those 2 years. And so it helped me like move through a lot of my fear stuff.
God, I love this. And I've never heard anything like this before. I mean, you talk about like getting on a project and clipping up and, you know, just get to the chains. And that's your first goal in the process of projecting. But it tends to be through the lens of having a specific project. But for you to essentially like hook or crook, aid climb, hang dog, whatever, like just get to the top of X number of routes that kind of intimidate you. I don't think I've ever heard that. And I can see the real value in that. You're going to do a ton of variety of moves and just be on a, you know, incredible variety of climbs. Take away a bit of that mystery around it, or just the stress or anxiety around this number or whatever that you maybe have built up in your mind. And then also probably find routes that inspire you. Like it's just like the ultimate project shopping. So yeah, I would love to actually explore this a little bit more. Talk me through when you were on the 5.12. 40 5.12s. First of all, it's a massive number.
Yeah.
So you got a ton of 5.12s. What happened when, you know, you didn't send it, but you really liked it? Did you just have to table it and then move on to the next one because the main goal was a volume of 5.12s, or were you keeping a special little few in your pocket?
Yeah, I think that there was a sub goal of like trying to send some of them because sending is also a skill. But I did like abandon like a lot of them because I was like, I need to move on. Like the idea is to get exposure to this terrain as much as possible. And I think that it really lent itself to those moments of I can do this that we were just talking about. Like, especially in the 513 year, it really reinforced like, oh, if I came back, I could do this. And then it also gave me a lot of information about where my weaknesses were. Because in the year that I was doing the 5.12s, I'd get on some things that are 12A, and, you know, I should have been able to do that at that time. And I was like, oh, this is a big weakness of mine. And I got through it. But this project would probably take me a lot longer than some 12Cs right now. And that's really, maybe that's good for me, you know? And I think it helped me not just chase like sending and getting like the totem pole. I think a lot of people want to go for, and get like a whole depth of experience on the grade.
Man, I really like that. I think that's very cool because it's a pyramid, but not necessarily of sending. And I often think about, as a busy weekend warrior, okay, if I'm going to get outside, I only have limited days outside. Like I don't want to have a ton of projects. I probably can only have one project. But, you know, if I was going to do a day where I would go out and just climb a bunch of, you know, 11s, which I should be able to do, quote unquote should, because there will certainly be ones that stop me. But I could also do a day where that's 12s or even 13s for that matter, and just bring like my little mini stick clip with me. And if I get really shut down, then it's all right. I'm clipping up. I'm not giving up. The goal is to get to the top and just experience it. So it doesn't seem like it would have to take away a lot of projecting days, if you will, if like the idea isn't to send them, if the idea is to just like go to try to get to the top. That's so interesting. Is that something that you have found that you've gone back to? Like, will you do that again, or do you think it served its purpose?
I've been thinking about whether I need to bring it back as a concept, because I do feel a lot of imposter syndrome about 13 plus. Like I've been on a couple and I feel like I can do those particular climbs if I put in the work. But in general, the grade of 13 plus is very intimidating. And so I think I'm wondering if, like after I kind of do some projecting, if the next step is kind of exposure therapy maybe to the grade, and having that process of like, this is what 13 plus feels like in all these different styles. And this is when I need to sharpen my skills for it and that kind of thing.
So hyped. Love that. I want to be able to make sure we have some time to talk about the ACJ and some of these undercover crushers that you've been talking to and we'll be featuring, but just kind of close things up on where you're at. Can you share with us where you see or where you want your climbing to go, like over the next few years?
It's really interesting because I'm getting to that moment where like initially I was like, you know, someday I'll, you know, when I was a baby climber, I was like, someday I would love to climb 513, and then someday I'd love to climb V10. And then as I progressed, I changed that, and I was like, someday I'd love to climb 13D. Someday I'd love to like, I think V10 kind of stayed there. I didn't really imagine I was going to climb harder than that. But I got on my first 13D It's this famous 13D in the Front Range called Big Papa, and it's like very power endurance-y. I got on it a couple months ago, and I did like all the moves the first time on it, and I did most of the sequences, and I was like, I can do this. You know, I had that feeling of I can do this, and I was like, okay, now what's the bar gonna be? I don't know. And so that's like a really fun feeling of like this life goal is in sight, because I've like really obsessed about this climb for a while, because I know this one woman who's slightly taller than me who has done it. And I know that it's quite hard for shorties, but it's like it's got a lot of lore around it in the area. And then I finally got on it, and I was like, I can do this. And I think I now have to go put in the work and actually do it. But so I don't know what comes after that, but I'm excited to work on that one because the movement is so sick. And there's also this 13C and 10 sleep that I'm excited to go back to that I hung last year.
Sick. Well, I mean, I know it's not ever really like a direct line that you can kind of point from boulder grade to sport grade, but at V11, I mean, that's 14 minus or something like that, right? 14 A, B, somewhere in there. And so, yeah, one would think that there's opportunity for you on the sport climbing side. And yeah, I mean, look, if you're doing every move and some sequences on a 13D, the first session on, you've got some room to grow there, it sounds like.
Yeah, totally.
That's cool. So now you've got the feeling, you got the I can do it feeling. So
yeah.
Well, welcome our good friend Anxiety back into the chat.
Yeah, seriously.
And then talking about it on a podcast.
Right. Now I have to. Oh no.
Right. We'll all be watching. It's what I do. I just shoot myself in the foot. I set some sort of like audacious goal, and then I have to do it. But that kind of motivates me. Like some people like to keep all their things secret or internal or whatever. It's just different motivations, different people, different personalities and all that. But for me, like as soon as I say something out loud, I'm like, all right, I better start scheduling some training sessions. Mm-hmm. So now you've said it out loud, Hannah.
I have, yeah.
Well, good luck with that. I mean, it just sounds like it's going to be an absolutely just rocket ship journey for you, just where you're at. And I can't wait to see how that develops for you. But let's take some time now to talk about other crushers, many of whom you've talked to, of course, on the podcast, but then have interviewed as well for the journal. And maybe we can start by having you tell us a little about the ACJ, because this is going to be a new publication that'll be coming out from the American Alpine Club. So what is it? And then let's talk about some people who are featured in it.
The American Alpine Club is very old. We're established in 1902. And in I think 1929 or so, we started creating the American Alpine Journal, which some people might be familiar with. It's this journal of record. It's 97 years old that we record like all of the most important long climbing ascents. This is normally like Janu and like the big mountains, like when Everest was first done in 1963 by an American, it was in there. And it's like American climbers all over the world doing big mountaineering alpine ascents. Mm-hmm. And we've been doing that for 97 years and then not covering sport climbing or bouldering. Like as the sport evolved, I think the AAC had several like identity crises about who we are and like that kind of thing. And obviously like most of our membership now, that's what they do. They rock climb, they trad climb, they sport climb, they boulder. A lot of them do also climb Rainier and like to go out into the big mountains in the Himalaya and all that type of stuff. But we were like, okay, we do have this journal of record for alpine climbing. There's not really any similar journal of record collected space where every single most important cutting edge thing that happened in a given year is like collated, because you can find it on Instagram, but then you have to like really search.
For sure.
Or like there's kind of like climbinghistory.com, but those are just kind of, that's a name of an ascent, a grade, and like the route, right? Like,
or they used to be covered in the monthly magazines, which of course most of them are no longer around. But mm-hmm. Yeah, it wasn't a journal of record like you're saying. It would just be like a profile on somebody who did something sick on the Salathe wall or whatever, and it's in there, but you have to go find the May 1991 issue or whatever to be able to figure out what that was.
Right. And often those were reported by journalists instead of, written by the climbers themselves. And so the whole idea of the ACJ is that we're doing what the AAJ does. We're trying to cover like the year in rock climbing each year, mostly from the first person perspective of the person climbing it, which is very fun.
That's really cool. Oh man, I'm sure as an editor that opens up a whole can of worms of things that you and Matt Samet had to work with. But there are some incredibly talented writer athletes out there, as I've seen in other publications or just their own posts that they do. Give us an example of just a few of those.
Okay, so Adamandra Flashing Lexicon, which is crazy because, he describes like that moment of fear before he decided to quest off on this, very consequential flash attempt. So that was one of them. Katie Lamb's essay about the dark side, her V16 ascent, so elegantly done. She's like a really beautiful writer. Noah Wheeler did an article about basically why he thinks board culture is producing the V17 boom, which was really fun.
So that's not about an ascent itself, but more about just the kind of a finger on the pulse of the times.
Yeah, I think he like describes his own ascent of Shaolin maybe as like an anchor point. And then he describes like why he got into board climbing, what he thinks it's doing for the larger sport and everything.
Right on.
Yeah.
This sounds amazing.
Yeah.
When's this coming out?
If you want a copy, you should be an AAC member by July 1st. And then the printed books will come back from the printer in like starting in September. We'll be shipping them to members.
Great. So for current members like myself, I'm a annual renewal member. I get my T-shirt and I get my other journals. They'll just come with the packet of the other journals that we typically get.
Yes. Yeah. If you're opted into any of our existing books, you'll automatically get it.
So cool. And then are you also profiling in there, because what you just mentioned, there's like 3 of the biggest names in climbing. Are there non-famous climbers that are contributing as well?
Yeah. So one of the things we were thinking about is like, the cutting edge is really cool, but how do we actually really capture a year in climbing? And so towards the back of the book, there's a section called American Rock and there's a section called World Rock. And that covers just like regional things of significance. And obviously what is significant can be like super up for interpretation. But this is where I think that it's really cool because it's just normal weekend warrior type people who just love the sport and are often like doing second ascents or putting up new stuff. Like in West Virginia, there's this guy, Andrew Like, who has this vision for crazy high balls. Like it's unbelievable how tall these are. And he'll like practice it on a rope and then he'll do it as a high ball. But like it's like tiny dime edging. And it's just so nuts. And then he's also put up some 14As in Seneca Rocks, which is like a really famous old crag in West Virginia. There's like this 23 pitch 11C multi-pitch and index. That's a sport multi-pitch that we covered. That is also a weekend warrior. There's 8-pitch 5.12 in the South Platte of Colorado. That is also a weekend warrior. This PhD student did a second ascent of a 14A trad line in New England somewhere. So yeah, it's like a lot of it's just like that. I see a relatable person describing like, and I left work and then I went on my session for the day and like describing the investment that a lot of us, I think, will really identify with, because I think struggle does connect all of us, as the premise of your show indicates. Like I can see Adamandra struggling and be like, that's somewhat related to me struggling. But when I have actual real weekend warriors talking about it, like that's really cool.
That's beautiful. Yeah. What struck me just from what you said there, talking about everyone from Adamandra to Katie Lamb and Noah to these, kind of undercover crushers, if you will, is that they're all out there pushing themselves in a way that is different, of course, whether if you're doing a scary high ball or a trad line or trying to flash, one of the most iconic routes, this Neil Gresham route, with Neil Gresham, by the way, belaying him, which just adds like a whole other layer. I can't wait to read that piece. But there's like this common fabric throughout all of that, which is just people are freaking psyched on something and they're finding a way to get after it. And for you now, having spent hundreds of hours talking with these people directly, helping to edit their pieces, working with Matt Samet, what strikes you or what have you personally taken away from these adventures and these stories and these proud ascents?
Just how sitting with detail in process can make any story unique. I've interviewed Matt a couple times now to like help promote the ACJ, and I've asked, he's been in climbing editing for 25 plus years. And one of my questions was like, okay, you just put together a book of climbing stories. Also, you've been doing this for 25 plus years. Do you ever get bored of it? And he was just like, no, because like people's process is it's like simultaneously so universal and so individual. And if you can do both of those things at the same time, like find the universal thread of like the struggle or the process or whatever it is, and also be as specific as possible and find those unique moments that are like unique to the individual, unique to the rock climb, it's going to feel really alive. So that was really a very fun moment because I think going into the project, I was like, how are we going to make full essays about bouldering? You know, I really don't know.
Right.
And some of the most successful stories in there are about boulders and someone's process on a boulder. And I think it's because you can get into those micro beta details.
Oh, I'm excited for this. Okay, so I'm already a member of the AAC. For those who aren't and are psyched, obviously, on this conversation in this journal, but there's a bunch of other benefits that come with being a member of the AAC. Can you give us just the overview, the pitch for where our membership fee goes, the work that it supports, and then the perks that can come along with it as well?
So there's different tiers of membership. I'll just kind of like focus on the $100 one, mainly because it's just the most popular. So that's the partner level.
That's the one I've got.
Great, perfect. And that's for a year, and it gets you access to our member t-shirt, all 3 of our books. So the Accidents Journal, which analyzes accidents that happen in climbing every year. This is really popular and important work on educating people on how to stay safe out there. The American Alpine Journal, which we just mentioned, and the ACJ. We also offer a rescue benefit, which is super popular as well and very valued. So if you are on a boulder, fall off, and sprain your ankle really bad, it could help you, if you have to get a helicopter, cover like a helicopter, which might be really rare for a boulder, but it also can cover your medical expenses. If you were to go to the ER, it could help cover your deductible up to $5,000, which is really helpful.
It's amazing. It's amazing. It's an amazing peace of mind. It's why I got it, to be perfectly honest. Like, I love the work that you all are doing, but like, it was definitely like a conversation with my wife. She's like, do the one where like you can get a helicopter if you need it. I was like, okay.
Yeah. And then we do a lot of like programming work that those like dues help make possible. Like we envision ourselves as like the people organization of climbing. We're trying to like resource climbers with anything they need. So one of the most important things, in my opinion, that we do is the Climbing Grief Fund. So we give grants to people who have experienced trauma or loss in the mountains related to climbing and help them get like access to therapists who are really familiar with climbing, and especially like trauma in climbing or avalanches or like skiing and that type of thing. We also do other grants that like fund climbing trips, which is really fun for members. Things like we're starting like a mentorship program and like that kind of thing. And then all this education work that we do around accident analysis, around the cutting edge of the sport, like kind of gathering those things. And we also have the biggest library in climbing, ever. We had this giant repository of all of these resources from American climbing and from, across the world of climbing. And a lot of my favorite work that I do personally for the magazine that I edit is like digging through those archives and finding the untold stories of climbing history and telling them, which has been really fun.
That's very cool. I imagine Chris Hampton's been over there quite a bit with his written in stone work.
He has, yeah.
That's great. I took a family trip after I helped to host the ICF in Lander over the summer, went to, with the family, to the Tetons in Yellowstone and the Badlands, and we just kind of like made a whole trip of it. And when I was in the Tetons, I was like, oh my God, first of all, the Tetons are freaking mega. But also, correct me if I'm wrong, I think there's like, is there an American Alpine Club, like little hostel or something there where you can crash when you want to try to summit, the Grand or something like that? I made a mental note because I'm like, I have to come back here.
Yes. So yeah, we also have like a lodging network, and that's the Grand Teton Climbers Ranch. So it's in the park. A lot of people just like, that's their base camp for big things like the Grand. It's just like this beautiful cabin structure. It's like sitting right below the Grand. You can see the Grand, and like, especially like as this, like the mood changes in the sky, it's just absolutely gorgeous. But we also have lodging facilities at the New. We have them in Waco. There's like 5 of them, I think.
Right on.
Yeah.
So as a member, you just like can go on the site and see if there's availability or something to book.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
That's freaking cool. Okay, cool. Well, now I've got to add the Grand. What's the one called in the Tetons?
The Grand Teton Climbers Ranch.
Meet me there, you guys. Thank you for the work that you and the whole team are doing over there at the American Alpine Club. I cannot wait to get my hands on my ACJ this summer/fall or whenever it hits the presses. And good luck to you this season with your climbing.
Yeah, thank you so much for such a fun conversation. It was really great to be a guest.
All right, y'all. That clips the chains on this Weekend Warrior episode with Hannah Provost. Hannah, thank you so much. Thanks for pushing yourself out of your comfort zone to have a conversation here on the other side of the microphone, the other side of the podcast table, if you will. You crushed it. No surprise. Full flash. And I really, really appreciate how open and thoughtful you were about everything you shared in this. I'm definitely going to be implementing my own version of the 5.12 Pact in my climbing this summer and into the early part of the fall season. I just love this idea of getting to the top of routes and just setting a bold goal. I'll have to think through it. And maybe it'll be a mix. Maybe I'll do some 5.12s and some 5.13s. I could certainly benefit from trying to get to the top of both of those grades and any number of them within those grades. But I just really like the framing around that. And it's not about sending them or how many can I send this season. It's just like, let me go experience a ton of different movement on rock. And that's something that I'm going to take to the gym as well. You know, we're pushing into the summer here. It's been really hot and just so manky in Kentucky. I don't know, wherever you all are listening, it's just been nonstop storms. We had a very dry spring that was awesome, and I'm incredibly grateful for. March and April were so stellar. But like all of the rain that we need, and I'm glad we're getting, has come in May. And so anyway, spending more time at the gym, and I think this could apply to the gym as well. There's a lead cave at my local gym, Rock Sport, and the routes are kind of notoriously sandbagged on that, and I usually just climb the easier things. But, you know, hook or crook, why don't I just get on and try to get to the top of the much harder ones and bolt to bolt them or stick up and just feel what those moves feel like. God, I just really like that. There's so much else in here to take away. So I hope you all enjoyed that. If you want to get your hands on the first ACJ, the American Climbing Journal, as Hannah described it, and she's been working very hard with Matt Samet and then the athletes directly because these are first-person accounts, the only way you can do it is by becoming a member at a level in which you receive their books. I'm the $100 a year member. I'm not sure what they call that, but it's awesome. It comes with those rescue benefits, as we discussed, and the other books that they put out, the other journals, and now the ACJ as well. But you have to sign up before July 1st. First of all, what a great way to spend $100. I mean, we just like piss $100 away on a few coffees or some beers or half a tank of gas. Oh, God. So if you've got a little bit of disposable income, I know times can be tight for a lot of people right now, but if you do have a bit of disposable income, I've been a member of the AAC for many, many years now. I have no idea. I've got so many of their shirts and stickers and all that, but I just let it recur because I know they're doing awesome work. And then I just discovered in this conversation that there's these hostels I can start taking advantage of and a bunch of other things as well. So anyway, I'm going to put a link down there in the notes for you. Click on that. Sign up as a member, get your copy of the ACJ. All of those incredible first-person accounts from Adam Andre to Katie Lamb, Noah Wheeler are the ones she mentioned, but there's many, many more in there, of course, as well as from the Undercover Crushers, like we talked about. That just seems like it's going to be an incredibly worthwhile tome to have on the coffee table or next to the hangboard just to keep you psyched and motivated. So hit that link down there and support the AAC. You can also hit the other link that's down there to help support me, which I'd really appreciate. If you can only support somebody, one thing after listening to this episode, pop over to the AAC and support the work they're doing and get yourself a copy of the journal that's coming out. But if you can also support me, I'd really appreciate it. I've got over 150 hours of bonus content over on Patreon, including the episode that I mentioned to Hannah, the one with Dr. Lindsay Shaw, the sports psychologist, where we talk about using breathwork and other tactics like watching specific movie clips or music to help up or down regulate the nervous system before pulling onto rock or plastic. And 100 other pro clinics and bonus episodes and my blogs and all of that. All of that is available over on Patreon. That link is down there. And there's also a free trial. So you can sign up for free, take advantage of all those awesome resources. And if you're into it, stick around, and it helps me to keep making these shows. And if you're not into it, you can just quit. No questions asked, no expectations, anytime. I just really appreciate the support if you can send it my way. Okay, just a mini update from me because I've got a plog coming out in like just a few days. So the mini update is what? Well, as I mentioned, the weather has turned, and while I'll still plan to get out to the red for some 5-point fun days and maybe kind of the 5.12 Pact type hook or crook, get to the top of routes thing that Hannah was talking about there, I'm mostly moving indoors, and I'm psyched on it. I've been hitting the treadwall. I've been hitting the kilter board. I've been hitting the weights. I've started a new hangboard routine, and I'll talk more about all of that in the blog because I'm like actually already seeing some pretty cool results from some of the changes that I've made to my training routine. And I just got off of a conversation with Dr. Tyler Nelson about critical force. I tested my critical force and then had an interview with Tyler all about that. Like, what is it? What does it test? What do we learn from it? What do we learn from looking at the curve, the kind of the critical force curve from the test that I did? And if you want a little bit of clickbait to stay tuned for the plug and also the Tyler Nelson episode, I basically was structuring my entire summer endurance workout wrong based on what Tyler analyzed from my critical force test. And so, I mean, I guess it wasn't totally wrong, but it was a little off the mark. It was a lot off the mark. Let me just say that. It was a lot off the mark. So after having that conversation, I've taken a new look at how the next 4 months are going to go. And I'm really excited about what that's going to mean for me. And also, by the way, what it can mean for you. So that episode with Tyler will come out for Patreon members in a couple of weeks, but also for Patreon members, including the free tier. I will be doing my monthly plug right here at the end of May. So you can check that one out over there on Patreon. Thank you so much for your support. Thanks for listening to this Weekend Warrior episode. If you are a weekend warrior, and I think you are, get after it. I'm so psyched. I'm so psyched that we're all just doing everything we can to have fun, improve, and pushing yourself in whatever ways make you comfortable, or in my case, quite uncomfortable. That could be a good learning experience as well. So yeah, I hope you're just having an awesome season and an awesome day, and I appreciate you. I'll see you next week.